You might remember yesterday the Niti Aayog meeting took place held by the centre, and something that was seen quite clearly was that the JDU leader Nitish Kumar skipped the meeting. Now, you might remember in Bihar, the JDU is in alliance with the BJP government. That's why there was much speculation caused around Nitish Kumar's skipping. However, in the last month, the Chief Minister has been seen to skip more than 4 different BJP and centre-led events. Now, we're receiving news that the JDU chief and the Bihar Chief Minister Nitish Kumar called up the Congress interim chief Sonia Gandhi. What could this possibly mean for the future of Bihar politics? These developments, remember, come amid continued rumours of a rift between the JDU and the BJP and many conversations around the possibility of the alliance breaking down. Remember, elections in Bihar are still far away, 2025. So the current alliance has a few more years to make do. Now, these are the updates we have so far on this entire story. My colleague Pallavi Ghosh is with us to bring us a lot more context on this story. Pallavi, our audiences might know the Congress has 19 MLAs in the Bihar government. Is that an important fact when we take a look at the fact that Nitish Kumar called up Sonia Gandhi yesterday?
See, in politics, every one MLA matters, and we know that governments have fallen or survived because of the votes of even one single MLA. You know, Congress is, of course, smarting from the fact that in Maharashtra, that alliance completely lost power, and therefore they're always going to be looking at other states where they can possibly form a government, and Bihar certainly is one such case. There have been attempts which have been made in the past, not just by Sonia Gandhi or the Congress party, but also by other political parties in the opposition spectrum, for example, Mamata Banerjee, and to try and reach out to Nitish Kumar, and they've been very disappointed by the stand that someone takes. What we are now picking up is, and this is what the Congress claims, is that Nitish Kumar and Sonia Gandhi spoke. Details of that is something which has not been given out completely. They're very sketchy. So we'll have to wait for an official confirmation from her office yet. But the Congress would obviously want to form an alliance with a Nitish Kumar and meddle in troubled water. So if the BJP loses power in Bihar, and we are talking hypothetically, for the Congress party and many in the opposition parties would be a reason to smile. And for Congress, certainly they will see it as a sweet revenge for what happened in Maharashtra.
Pallavi, could you also walk us through the history when it comes to the JDU's relationship with the Congress over the last decade? What does that look like, and what are roadblocks possibly to the two parties coming together?
Well, I mean, there was a time when the RJD plus the Congress plus the JDU were in power together in Bihar, and then we saw how RJD and JDU fell apart. And since then, the things have never been same. The JDU's alliance with BJP has always been a sore point with the Congress party, calling him a betrayer, and also looking at him as someone who would, when push comes to shove, would take a stand clearly against opposition parties, not even respond positively to overtures by, say, a Mamata Banerjee or even a Sonia Gandhi. But, you know, as I said, in politics, everything is forgotten. Friendships are very short-lived, so as far as enmity is concerned. And if it so happens that the government falls over there, or there's a possibility or the Congress sniffs an opportunity to form a government over there, I think they're going to be open to it with JDU.
Pallavi, one last question from you, because I believe we have not yet been connected with a reporter from Bihar, so I will still ask you for some more updates here. What updates do we have in terms of developments yesterday? Yesterday, when we first received news that Nitish Kumar had skipped that meeting, just a few hours after that, you received visuals of the Chief Minister attending local events in Bihar. When we were able to speak to JDU representatives, they told us he's still recovering from COVID symptoms, and that's why he couldn't travel. Have they at all changed their tune since this news of the JDU having spoken to the Congress?
I think they're going to be waiting and watching to see what happens in the JDU meeting later. But, you know, the fact that Nitish Kumar says that, and his supporters say that he was unwell and he doesn't want to travel, hasn't cut much ice. And it's not been the first time he skipped the Niti Aayog meeting. Wherever there has been an opportunity of the BJP or the Prime Minister Nitish Kumar coming face to face, very often, especially in meetings in the national capital, Nitish Kumar has skipped it. And I think all eyes will be there where the JDU, which always feels that they are no longer being given that position which they had in Bihar, and by virtue of the fact that they didn't do that well, and the votes have certainly come down in Bihar, will certainly be trying to assert itself. And as I said, other political parties matter. Congress matters. RJD, JDU, will that also come together? These are going to be, they all have a common enemy, so to say, the RJD and the Congress, which is the BJP.
Okay, and Pallavi, the last question I'd like to ask you right now is, do we have any word from the Congress state unit? Do we know if anything has been conveyed to them from the higher order of the Congress in the centre in Delhi?
Well, all the MLAs have been asked to stay back in Patna, and the reason is simple, because I think this is a time when the Congress would want to push its hand and push its luck actually to see if there's a possibility that JDU says, okay, they are withdrawing from the alliance, which may be very presumptuous at this point of time, but one never knows what happens in politics. So the Congress MLAs have been asked to stay there. There's also a fear and apprehension within the Congress party that will some of them be poached by the BJP if the BJP feels that the government has a possibility of falling. So will it be a repeat of what happened in Maharashtra, where we saw that Shiv Sena MLAs actually crossed over to the other side?
All right, Pallavi Ghosh, thank you so much for bringing us details. For our audiences, we have some more breaking news related to the same story. A quickly developing situation in Bihar, which is why we're tracking it so carefully. We're learning of two updates here. These are all intel pieces or pieces we're receiving from sources within the JDU. First, that Bihar is being projected as a terror haven by the central government. This is the sentiment within the JDU. The other sentiment is that Nitish Kumar, the current chief minister, never wanted JDU to join the central government in 2019. It was RCP Singh. Remember, RCP Singh quit the party just 2 days ago. But according to this source, it was RCP Singh who made the move on his own for this alliance to come together. Let's go over to my colleague Maria Shakil with us right now. She's our political editor to give us a lot more context on this story. Maria, what do we mean when we're telling our audiences that the centre is, at least according to the JDU, attempting to project Bihar as a terror haven? What does that mean?
Yes, so recently we have seen the investigations that have happened in Popular Front of India in several parts of Patna, Sabzi Bagh, and in other places like Pulwari Sharif. These are minority-dominated, parts of Patna. There have been multiple raids by the central agencies, and because of that, the larger sentiment which was seen was, as per sources in the JDU and Nitish Kumar's administration, that this was being done by the central government on its own without taking Bihar, government and Bihar administration on board in these investigations. So the sense certainly is that in all these investigations, Bihar was being projected as a terror haven where